Complete Easter meal options from Honey Baked come with almost everything you need for a delicious, convenient feast. From ready-to-serve slow-smoked ham and juicy turkey to tasty heat-and-serve sides and desserts perfect for any sweet tooth. The only thing they don't include is the basket and polyester bunny costumes. So, almost everything. Order your complete Easter meal and make your Easter golden. Only from the Honey Baked Ham Company at honeybaked.com/Easter.
Today on CityCast Madison. Election day is here, folks. Did you vote already? Do you have a plan to vote? Of course, it's a big one. We're electing a new state Supreme Court justice, plus the mayor of Madison, school board members, and all city alders. Your alder is your advocate in city government. They make the rules. One alder, Grant Foster, decided before he left office he was going to clean house on some very outdated rules. Like, did you know we banned trick bikes? It's Tuesday, April 4th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Hi, Alder Foster.
Hey, how are you, Bianca?
I'm doing pretty good. I hear that you have kind of become the Marie Kondo for ordinances.
There you go. Clean out your life.
And why did you take this on?
Well, there's a few reasons for it. One, it's sort of my job right now. The only people that can get rid of an ordinance is someone who's on the Madison Common Council. So, if somebody's got to do it, or they just sit there and pile up. So, I think that was reason number one. Reason number two, I think anytime we've got laws on the books that we don't really expect to be enforced, or we don't expect them to be enforced all the time, it's a setup. It's a bad situation, and it's just most likely scenario is that it leads to uneven enforcement.
I was going to say, what did you mean by setup? That it's unevenly enforced?
Yeah. If we have laws that we think, oh yeah, well it's fine, it won't get enforced unless it really needs to get enforced, you're basically turning over that responsibility over to the police to say, hey, you make a decision now on a case-by-case scenario whether you should enforce this law today or not. And I think it's a setup for police. I think it's a setup for the community. So I think we need to be clear, and we just shouldn't have laws on the books that we don't expect to be applied evenly. Yeah.
Well, you're the person doing this, though. Does this type of city law give you joy?
Yeah, I'm a nerd, so sure. It's joyful in a way. It's interesting to me that I guess I'm a little bit of a standout in this regard, but it really, I think, should be one of the prime duties of somebody that's on Common Council. Like I said, we're the only ones that can do it, but I think a lot of folks, it's a really tough job. It's complicated. There's no training manual. And honestly, there's people that have been on the council for years and years and years and have never really read all of our city ordinances. So I guess for me, it seems like a natural and normal thing to do, but I also get that it's apparently weird.
Somebody's got to clean house. My goodness.
Somebody's got to do it.
A constant. Who's doing the dishes? Okay. What's the wildest ordinance you came across?
Oof, the wildest one.
Or the most outdated.
Yeah, I guess a few of the ones that I tried to touch. One of them was, there was really restrictive ordinance on where you could leave your garbage can when it wasn't out at the curb. So it was very specific. If you had it on the side of your house, that was against the rules. So, again, one that wasn't really enforced except when you'd get a neighbor that would be pissed off at their neighbor and they would call building inspection and say, hey, they're leaving their garbage can in X location. And then building inspection would have to come out and say, oh, yep, that's actually correct. We're going to have to tell this person to move their garbage can to the back of their house.
Was there so your garbage can, the rule is that your garbage can needed to stay behind your house?
Behind, like directly adjacent.
Was there any reasoning for that?
I think there's a bunch of them that I came across that just felt to me like, I bet this made total sense in like 1955 and, everybody was watching Leave It to Beaver and this is just, obviously everyone should have their garbage can in the same spot.
Decent manners sort of stuff.
Right.
I hear, so thanks to you, trick bike riding is now legal in Madison.
Woohoo!
Woo! Yeah, ride them trick bikes. When and why was trick bike riding banned?
It's one that's in so many cities have this with very similar language. So I'm pretty sure it came out of, there was some sort of like standard rules of the road that were shared around, and communities just adopted a bunch of stuff without even
Literal rules of the road.
literal rules of the road. That's what they call it. And yeah, so it's why a lot of state rules of the road are very similar to each other. And then there was sort of a municipal version. So yeah, so many cities across the country have this provision in there, a lot of them not even knowing that it's in there. In our case, it's not even defined. You can't trick ride. Well, what is trick riding? My son was in a unicycle club at Marquette Elementary, and like, I guess you can ride a unicycle. Is that trick riding? If you take your hands off the handlebars of a regular bike, that's not okay. I mean, it was just silly.
Yeah, I just smiled so hard that your son was doing unicycling. And I have to say, as a youngster, I remember where I grew up, not too far away from here, there were issues with trick bikes. Like, oh, you can't have your bike this way. And it felt very strange as a youngster. Another one that I understand that you worked on, until recently, it was unlawful for Madison kids, meaning kids between 12 and 17 years old, to be, quote, upon the streets or alleys or public places within the city of Madison during curfew hours. That also, I remember feeling like it was enforced maybe in certain areas more than others. So is that the case here?
Yeah, this is one that I also honestly didn't know was on the books. I mean, I've got two kids at East High right now, and certainly was at fault for this. This makes it illegal for the young person to do it. It also is illegal for a parent to allow it to happen. And then, if you break curfew, or if a youth breaks curfew, the parent also gets a punishment for it. Many, many times I was in favor and allowed my kid to ride their bike home after 11 p.m., certainly in the summertime, coming home from a friend's house. And apparently that was illegal. So this is one that to me was in that camp of, comes out of that kind of 1950s era. I thought it was a no-brainer. Interestingly enough, there actually was some real discussion and debate at council about it, with at least a few council members not supporting repeal of this and wanting to keep it in place.
Interesting. And what were they saying? Why? And actually, but quickly before we get into that, it's now repealed, but the curfew hours before were Sunday, Thursday, 11 p.m. through 4 a.m., and Friday and Saturday, midnight to 5 a.m. Why did a couple of members want it to stay on the books?
Yeah, well, I mean, what they stated, at least during the meeting, is that rules are important, and it's important that our youth learn to follow rules. I heard from other members of the community. I think apparently there was a bit of an uproar on Nextdoor after it got repealed, and I heard from a number of parents who were very frustrated because it sounded to me like they didn't want to sort of take their role as a parent and set boundaries and set expectations for their kids, and instead wanted to kind of rely on the city ordinance and MPD doing that on their behalf. And so they were disappointed that now their kid who wanted to stay out past curfew, they would have to make their own rule instead of saying, oh, sorry, you can't because city law doesn't allow you to. So I thought that was kind of a funny reason to have an ordinance in order to set boundaries for your kids.
Well, also, I feel like some kids have jobs after 14 and might be coming back late if it's in the restaurant industry or whatnot. So I feel like it also would penalize people, who are working.
Well, funny enough, it actually had a carve out for that. So you were not breaking the rule if you came back from a job, as well as a bunch of other really funny things like a school dance or a church activity, or so you read the thing and you get where it came from, and it sort of made the whole thing even that much more absurd, right? Because if you were smart enough,
it's a relic.
Yeah, you could just say, "Oh yes, officer, I'm coming home from a church activity." The only way that you're actually breaking the law is if you don't know, how to respond to it. Yeah, in my case too, we haven't owned a car for a number of years. My kids grew up walking, biking everywhere. And, it was obvious that there was a much higher chance that they would get stopped by a police officer if they're riding their bike home. It's another thing that really disproportionately affects people in different ways.
Hammock? Check. Arnold Palmer? Check. Motorized solar shades? Yes, please. Get your home spring ready with Blinds.com. Upgrading your home with custom window treatments from Blinds.com is a small project with a huge impact. Relax and let Blinds.com handle the install. It's easy. Just click installation at checkout. Plus, Blinds.com has a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Save 45% off selected products at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Whoa, your DSW store is having a mega sale with the lowest prices ever on best-selling brands, including Sperry, Merrill, Chaco, and Wolverine. Snag spring sandals, sneakers, and boat shoes for the family under $40. Plus must-have trail shoes under $60 and kids sandals under just $13. And hurry, these prices won't last. Get to your DSW store or DSW.com to start shopping ASAP.
Another ordinance you successfully amended was Madison's public indecency law. What happened there?
That was one that I was excited about getting rid of this one. So part of what it made illegal, or so I thought, was bearing of the female breast. And so I thought, well, this is a sort of a no-brainer in Madison.
Free the nip.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was really excited to help, and turns out that this ordinance, the way it was created, was pretty problematic in that it defined nudity, including bearing of a female breast, but didn't actually prohibit that. So it's sort of a weird, just poorly written ordinance at the end of the day. So we did still get rid of that section, but it didn't actually make a real change, even without taking on the question of what's decent or not related to the human body. It was another opportunity to just get rid of, I think, something that doesn't really match up with how a broad section of the community deals with this today.
You just got rid of that language because it just shouldn't be in the books and you're cleaning them up.
We shouldn't have it on the books, and I'm glad that the NIPs continue to be free.
Speaking of there's no segue, but free the NIP. You have so much knowledge of the city laws. You just mentioned, we're having a whole new rung of alders who are going to be coming in, and you're not running again. Why are you leaving?
Well, it's just a ton of work. I mean, everybody's got a different experience. I think everybody has different expectations of themselves in the role. I went into it planning and expecting to put a lot of time and energy into it. I was in a good spot. I was able to, mostly focus on this and not have to keep up with another full-time job at the same time. But it's definitely of the most most difficult job I've ever done, and I've had some big ones. So it's been a lot of work. It's been more kind of emotionally challenging than I think I anticipated. I sort of knew I'd be in the spotlight in a way, but I also felt like I was used to dealing with customer complaints in previous jobs and, thought I had a thick enough skin. But there's something very personal about kind of the way that criticism happens. And, I think the last few years have been really tough with COVID. It's been a hard time for a lot of people. And there just aren't a lot of good protections in place for elected officials. And so you're really exposed to a lot of, what I think is often unfair criticism, very personal, very pointed. And, you hear sort of celebrities talk about that. And I think local alders are not exactly celebrities, but
a little bit, yeah.
Well, you can't get through, if you want to pull up your Facebook and just relax and, not think about city stuff, all of a sudden there's some comment in some sassy neighborhood page or wherever you might find it, that just sort of gets you back into work. And so, I think that was a real drain, honestly.
Yeah, it's not good to hear that. What kind of protections do you think would be helpful?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't have specific ideas. Some of the things that I did put forward that didn't pass were related to really starting to think about and treat this work as real work, to have it paid. That was another thing. I was in a spot where I could do this with, basically making $14,000 a year. I need to make money at this point. And so the only people that can really do this are people that are making money somewhere else or have other people to take care of them. So that's one thing, is actually start to be honest about what we want out of our elected officials, how valuable their work is. You get what you pay for. So I've been a strong advocate for that, even though it's a really unpopular in a way, mostly because it's just a really cheap and easy way for some elected officials to pander to the public and say, I'm very principled. I don't do this for the money. I don't support paying alders because it's a good way to sort of gain favor and get reelected. But the end result is that we've got a pretty fragile and not very effective governing body, honestly, because it's just a bunch of volunteers who don't have the supports needed to do the job well.
This is something that the council needs to do, is clean up these books, and you're doing the deep dives. And I just have to note that we just did a conversation about the chicken ordinance, which you wrote, which is we upped the ordinance to 4 chickens to 8. We talked about that recently. You actually have little baby chicks in the room you're sitting in right now, which is very, very fun. I wanted to ask, how many how many of these outdated ordinances did we get off the book?
Yeah, well, I did a few over the years, but then as I was looking towards the end of this term and knowing I wasn't running again for another term, I kind of just went back. I'd taken some notes over time of things that stood out for me as being weird or maybe didn't need to be there, and just did kind of a quick skim through and found, probably over 20 ordinances that I thought should be repealed or changed. I put most of them forward. A few of them I didn't, just because I knew they would be maybe too controversial to get done in a short amount of time. But yeah, it was a decently long list, and I guess I feel pretty proud about doing it, getting them all in time, and was happy that they were all supported at the end of the day.
You should. So it also sounds like, though, that there might be more outdated ones embedded in the book. So you cleaned a lot of house, but there's still more cleaning potentially to be done.
For sure. The only people that can formally make it happen are members of the Common Council. It's the only people that can sponsor an ordinance change. But if there are folks out there that are, sort of guerrilla legislators, all of the ordinances are available at Municode. There's only 42 chapters. So really, you can just start small if you want, but start to read them. It's interesting. And if you have ideas, if you've got thoughts of things that should be changed, it's pretty easy to find an alder that might be sympathetic and they could sponsor the change for you.
Guerrilla legislators, did you hear that call? We will link to that. So you guys, you look in our show notes because we will link to that. And Grant, because we have you and there's this big election, there will be new alders. Do you have any advice for them? Anyone particularly who might be on the council for the first time?
Oh, yeah. Do your homework. Ask questions, especially do it ahead of time. Don't wait to the meeting and just sort of wonder what's going on. Actually read the materials, reach out to staff to try and figure out what's going on. Be careful about deferring to staff opinion. That's really an interesting dynamic, I think, that I've learned a lot more about. There's a lot of power and influence in sort of city staff and the bureaucracy. It's tied in some real ways to mayoral power as well. And it's just been really interesting to see over time, how different alders kind of approach it. We've got incredible staff at the city, really smart, dedicated professionals, a lot of knowledge. But it's really not clear kind of where the lines are between creating policy and sort of carrying it out. You definitely have staff that are more comfortable asserting themselves and their own opinions and their own policy preferences. And sometimes you have alders that say, hey, we shouldn't micromanage staff. Let's just do whatever they say. So I think it's really important for alders to, yes, be respectful, get the information, trust information that we're getting from professionals, but then really make sure that alders understand that it's their role to represent the community and make the decisions and actually set the policy.
Alder Foster, thank you for your service to Madison. And thank you for cleaning up these books. These are some major outdated ordinances. And thank you for telling us about it. This has been really fun and insightful.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Appreciate the conversation.
That's Grant Foster, Madison City Alder for the Near East Side. Also, we should note that here on CityCast Madison tomorrow, we'll be serving up hot, fresh election results. So if you want to get a download on what happened in the election, meet you back here first thing tomorrow. And here's what else Madison's talking about. An update on your favorite ginormous disco ball off of I-94. The $1 billion Microsoft data center set for the Foxconn site is one step closer. The Mount Pleasant Village Board approved the sale of more than 300 acres for the campus. It goes to the Racine County Board next. And it's state budget season. Tomorrow, Wednesday, April 5th at 6 p.m., State Senator Melissa Agard, who represents the east side of Madison, plus Monona, Sun Prairie, and parts of Fitchburg, is holding a state budget listening session. This is with Senator Kelda Roys of the Joint Finance Committee. This will be at the Alda Leopold Nature Center in Monona. We'll throw a link in our show note with the details. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this podcast with someone who likes to trick out their bike? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Talk soon.